Hey, this Manna Mike. I'm not sure what you own, but this here is on the mark. Like a spiral from a 5-star recruit, we throwing darts, really focused. WD-40 couldn't stop the way we grinded. In the trenches, putting that work in, I relate to all my linemen. This is for the men, the boys do not belong here. Tiptoeing to the top, we doing cone drills. The hottest show in the world, you don't even gotta search. Steady putting in work, you see the sweat up on my shirt. They wasn't aware of us at first, we wasn't on their radar. Now every play that we make, they gon' say similar to a razor blade, we gon' stay sharp. The news ain't official if it's not on the mark.
Network, the On Your Mark show, powered and sponsored by Epic Sports Apparel. Every play I compete. Man, it's April already, man. April Fools done passed by, and we all into a whole nother month, man. I can't believe this way time is flying. We're rolling. We're about to have an eclipse next week. I mean, what else can you ask for? We're going to hit our mark today. We're going to educate and elevate you as well. Got a special guest in the house, my guy Marshall Levenson from Rivals.com, and Coach J in the building, off the road, Epic Sports Apparel CEO, Coast to Coast Athletics CEO. What it do, man? First of all, man, how you doing, Marshall? Appreciate you coming through.
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I've seen you a couple times at a few events in the last few, weeks, couple months. Been busy, so I'm excited to talk about it and talk about what we're doing a little bit.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you joining us, Coach. What's up with it, man?
Man, happy to be in the building. Finally.
The building, no
man. Been on the road, man. Happy to be in the building.
Absolutely.
Happy to be back home.
Absolutely, man. As always, we appreciate you for joining us off the road.
Love it.
But Marshall, what we'd like to do is to kind of tell us how you got to where you are, what you do, how you got into the business of what you're doing now.
I mean, pretty simple for me. I played sports in high school. Knew I wasn't going to play in college, so kind of, started looking of like, what do I want to do? Knew I wanted to be around sports and in sports, and obviously, a lot of times that's either like sports management or media. So I kind of gravitated towards the media side of things, and ended up coming across, thanks to my mom, Oklahoma State's media program, which I think this was true when I went there, which I only graduated a year ago, but I think it's still true, that they're the only sports media degree in the country. There are a bunch of schools have sport, they have journalism or they have communications or whatever, but Oklahoma State actually had a sports media degree, and that's all you learned was sports. You didn't have to worry about general news or political news or like just anything else that I didn't have interest in or whatever.
Absolutely.
And so got to Oklahoma State. I was already interested in recruiting. Grew up in Louisiana. I was an LSU fan, so I followed LSU recruiting for years. And so right as I got to Oklahoma State, or even before, got hooked up with the 24/7 site there, and basically started working the day I got to campus. And so it kind of just started there, and then with the same team moved to a Sports Illustrated site and started growing there, and then went independent with the same team. So I was at Oklahoma State for 3.5 years, and covered Oklahoma State recruiting while I was there, and towards the end, kind of built my own personal brand, built social media presence, relationships with recruits and stuff like that. Kind of learned the industry, had a couple good mentors, and then towards the end of my time at OSU, 8-9 months before I graduated, On3 reached out to me, got on with On3, worked on a couple different sites there, Michigan, A&M, and then my last one was USC, and then just at the beginning of this year, got hooked up with Rivals and joined the national team, the national analyst team at Rivals, and so I've been on the job for, I guess, just a little over a month now, maybe a month this week, something like that, and so I'm enjoying it. It's been a pretty quick rise. I mean, I graduated from Frisco Wakeland in 2019, and then graduated from OSU in 2023. So yeah, it's been a quick thing for me, but I've been kind of in recruiting from the get-go, so that's my main thing. I've always loved football, and recruiting just kind of ended up kind of falling in love with it as time went on.
Man, that's great, man. I've seen you around. Seems like you've been around like 5 or 6 years.
Seems like
I mean, I bumped into you for several years. I had no idea that you were still in school. I mean, I thought you'd been in the game like 7, 8 years. You know what I mean? It's just you're always a fresh face around and, cordial and, the conversations that we have and bumping into each other. I thought you'd been in the game for a while because I always see you.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting to get the backstory on that because that's what drives it. And you spoke about the relationships, and that's what a lot of things that we do, coach, is about building relationships.
All
Just
about
talk about that a little bit.
Biggest thing is, again, like he said, and what you alluded to, Mark, is relationships, and also to the vehicle, guys, of football, right? Everybody has a stop when it comes to playing football physically. So as you're growing, build those relationships, whether it's with coaches, with writers, because you never know when the physical part of the game stops, what direction you can go in and keep that football vehicle rolling. So that's just another asset that you guys can have. But it's all about relationships. It's not always what you know, but it's what you know tied to who you know.
Right.
So that's important. Another thing, too, Oklahoma State, if you are truly, truly serious about sports, writing, stuff like that, that was one of my first stops when we went on an official visit. I wanted to see that room.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. I was just in awe of.
Yeah, and I think it's only going to get better because, that building we were in is actually one of the oldest on campus, but there's a lot of really smart people there. And
Absolutely.
A lot of people that, know what they're doing. And who knows what the actual, what this actually means. But one of the main reasons that I, went there, because like I said, I grew up a lifelong LSU fan. And so kind of my whole life, I was like, well, I'm going to go to LSU. That's like, obviously. And then moved to Frisco right before high school. And obviously that changes things. I was no longer in Louisiana. And then, things just fell how they did. But, one of the main sells that OSU had for that program was that they had like a 100% job placement rate.
And
it was like
I believe it.
Everyone that graduates with a sports media degree gets a job like out of college. And it's now, whatever that might change, the status of the job or whatever, but it was like, okay, that's a good place to start at least. And so you're right. There's a lot of smart people there.
Absolutely. It's amazing and the time that they put into it. From the time you get there to the time you finish, you're going to know what you're talking about. So I truly believe in that program.
And for anyone that's interested in that kind of thing, definitely look at OSU because compared to a lot of different schools, they actually let you get like involved in stuff. Like the moment you step on, there's some other schools that are like, oh yeah, when you're a junior, when you're a senior, yeah, you can write for this paper, or you can do this video thing or whatever. But you get to Oklahoma State and they're like, nah, go have at it. So
and
that was beginning, that was super cool.
That was interesting
because a lot of time, and luckily for me, I was lucky enough, and obviously, I think my work ethic had something to do with it, but like I was able to get that job almost immediately getting there. But so I was able to learn, not only in the classroom, but like while doing real life stuff, and so that was beneficial. So that's what they allow you to do. And that stuff. Really, Oklahoma State does that in a lot of different facets. If anyone's interested in going there.
So the question, while you're saying that, what I'm thinking, now is this something where you have to be present on campus, or do they offer that online?
No, a lot of it's on campus just because, they have, a lot of, it got to a point, especially because my freshman year was when COVID hit.
Right.
So it was like a lot of stuff became online just out of, necessity. So, it was still like, hey, go do you can film things with your phone. Like if you're, trying to get into this field, you don't need crazy equipment or anything like that. Like obviously there's nice equipment in here, but it's like if you were starting up a podcast, you could, do the voice recorder on your computer and stuff like that. Yeah. So, you could go out and do a little project on your phone or whatever, and you could, do a voiceover on like iMovies or whatever the case may be. Right. And so, there's, They offer things like that online, but I think of if possible, the in-person stuff. There is a degree of part of that you should want, or if you're able to do that, that adds to the experience.
I think it's way more impactful because being on campus, you get to actually do the everything with the actual games because you have all those sports there that you have a hand in. Being there to help you develop your craft. So, being online is great, but being there, especially with all the stuff they have going on at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, if you go to any of the sports, and this is, I think this is fairly rare. I only went to one school, but I've been to other games and stuff. when you go to, like, if you're in, like, a post-game press conference for really about any sport, but, I mean, especially when you look at, I mean, football and basketball, which are the two biggest on any campus, I mean, you go into the post-game press conference, and, yeah, you have your newspaper writers and, you know, your 247 or Rivals or whatever sites are there, but then you also have, like, you know, 4 or 5 reporters from the school newspaper that generally are not, you know, they may be allowed to, like, watch, but they're not allowed to, you know, ask questions. But, I mean, you've got, you know, 18-year-olds asking questions to, you know, the starting quarterback or Mike Gundy or whatever. And so you're able to, you know, sometimes, you know, some people may ask a goofy question or may get some sideways looks because they don't know how to ask something or whatever. But you get to learn like that, which is pretty cool. And so, I mean, that was something that I always, and I mean, I never worked for the school newspaper because I worked for the 24/7 site when I was there. So, I mean, I got credentials through that. But it was the same process where it was like, from the get-go, I was able to, you know, live that lifestyle or live, you know, the daily, you know, life of trying to do that job and everything, and it you know, I feel like I did a good job. So.
Oh, you did.
Absolutely, man. And you know, I've seen your work from afar for the last probably 2 or 3 years. You know, the 247, especially the on-3 stuff. And you know, when I saw you at the Under Armour camp, and since you've been at Rivals, you've hit the ground running. I haven't seen you not so busy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We kind of follow each other on Twitter and you know, retweet each other's stuff and things like that. So I know how busy you are, and that's why I wanted you to come in and talk. You know, right now we've been in a kick on off-season things that you need to do as a player, and we try to educate parents and players on what they need to do. You guys have a big camp coming up. One of the national camps is going to be here in the state of Texas, April 28th, April 27th and 28th, coming to Dallas. It's a big camp, regional big camp, you know, because you draw kids from Oklahoma, Louisiana, Mississippi, of course, Texas, even Tennessee, you know, wherever they can get in where they fit in. So the big thing is, what do you do at camps to get the attention that you need to get the exposure? You know, there's a certain way you have to handle yourself. So when you're out at a camp, let's just take camps for a second, because we can get into 707 and things like that as well, because you're present at those type of things as well also. But when they come to you know, a big event like this, what are some of the key things that you know, they should be doing? Of course, some of these things I'm sure are going to be position specific, and you can get into that as well. But you know, the ultimate goal is to get that exposure, to get noticed, to you know, find someone that's interested in you that could potentially lead you, you know, to getting interest from a college.
I mean, I think when you're at it in any our camp, any camp really, I mean, the most important thing is reps. So I mean, if you're there, and I mean, yeah, you got a lot of times in different positions do it different ways, but you know, got different drills or whatever. So there's cameras on every drill. So the more you can get in front of the cameras, if you're doing good at least, you know, the better. So, I mean, it is one of those things where it's like, I mean, everyone kind of talks about this, but if there's an opening, like, take it. Like, if they say, all right, who wants first, jump up there. And, I mean, that's the biggest thing is put yourself out there. And, I mean, when it comes to the evaluation standpoint, we can get into that of different positions and stuff like that. But, you know, from a player perspective, if you're going to go to a camp, I mean, go to – you know, compete. Don't just try to go like, oh, I'll get my, you know, my 2 reps. Because if you watch, I mean, there's some guys or whatever that, whether it's, I don't know if they're scared or shy or they just don't know or whatever. I mean, they'll get their 2 reps and then they're done, and then it might be, you know, another 10 minutes before they get back up there. But then you see the guys that kind of like inch up the line and stuff like that. So it's like, try to be one of those people. You don't want to take reps from other people, but sometimes it's like if you want to get yours. So I mean, definitely, you know, be outgoing about putting yourself out there at camps to, you know, put together enough video if someone's like, oh, we only saw them once or twice, or like, hey, we saw 6 or 7 reps here and they looked clean. Like, try to put yourself out there is like one of the biggest things for any camp, really.
Coach, we talk about these things all the time, and one thing he mentioned was getting multiple reps, you know, and you know, we're at these camps and you kind of see guys standing around, and he's chuckling for a reason. I know where he's about to go, but you know, trying to get reps to stand out, you can't just you know, put your hands in your pocket and just look around and take the scenery in. You got to be, you know, you got to be a dog.
One of the biggest things, going back to what we do at Flex Zone, is we push kids to get reps. It's important early, parents. It's important to teach your kids. You're not going for a fashion show. You're not going to get, you know, somebody's autograph. You are going to showcase what you do. I have tons of videos of my guys getting multiple reps. It's so many different ways that you can go about doing that, and even he also can answer the question as to prior, what should you do? Because we're focusing on, what you do when you get there. But there is a big thing, a lot of things that you have to do prior. But once you get there, you got to show you a dog. If it's 500 kids, and I always say this, and don't let this go past you. If it's 500 kids there, how does your kid stand out? If it's 500 kids, 50 coaches, how does one kid, your kid that you drive, sit in line hours and hours and hours of waiting to get in, how will that kid stand out? If you don't focus on that part, it's not even worth going because you won't be seen. So that's the most critical part. And one of the biggest ways to stand out is be explosive and get a ton of reps. If you're getting 2 reps, 3 reps, you probably won't be seen. The more reps you can get, there is a high likelihood of coaches saying, oh, I seen that kid again. Oh, there you go again. There you go again. Let me actually watch this kid now, right? So those kind of things, Mark, are extremely important in kids leveraging, camps and those things to get the exposure that they need. It's not about I want to go to a camp to get an offer. It's not a rivals camp. It is about getting the exposure so you parlay that exposure to your Friday night film.
Absolutely.
So you can get offers. So understand that. It has nothing to do with I'm showing up to a Rivals or 247 Dave Campbell Flex Zone to get offers. I'm going to get a ton of exposure so people can write about me. Who is this kid? I want to see him with his pads on.
Right.
That parlays into offers.
Absolutely.
Now, if you're again, 6'2", 6'3", monster built, that's going to take care of itself. You can just walk in the mall and that's going to happen. Yeah. So that's nothing. Right. But if you're not that guy, you have to go in and walk away with people saying, I want to see that dude again.
Right. Shout out to my guy Will Coleman, Coach Coleman tapping in. Don't be afraid to line up against the top guys. That's big. It's like Marshall said and Coach said, don't shy away from competition. The more reps you get, the more exposure you get.
And if you're a top guy, I hate seeing this. If you're a top guy, don't say, well, I already got it. I'm the man. Get some reps.
Right.
I mean, dominate.
Yeah.
If you're a top guy, listen, you're not going to win every rep.
Right.
But just to show guys that, hey, listen, I'm here. I'm going to eat your lunch.
I mean, sometimes, and we saw this at the Dallas Under Armour camp when I talked to you last. If you're a younger guy or just a guy that doesn't, you don't think you're getting seen enough or whatever, if there's a time and a place that calls for it, call out
Absolutely.
One of those top guys.
Absolutely.
And there was a crazy situation I won't say crazy, but a funny, intense situation between, a freshman that's about to be a sophomore and then one of the top about to be seniors.
Yeah.
I
know
don't know
exactly what
I don't know
you're
if we want to say their names.
No, you don't have to. I know.
Yeah. But it was an offensive lineman, defensive lineman situation.
Right. Yeah.
And the younger kid who has a bunch of offers already, but he's not, because he's so young, he's not ranked yet or anything. He will be. But, he called out one of the top guys at the offensive line. And normally, I think they had 4 reps, 6 reps. Well, I think they had 4 or 6 just against each other. And so, that they were trying to rotate, but it was like, no, get back up here. Me and you again. So that, that stands out. And I think sometimes, and some people may have different opinions on this, but I think it's smart. There's subtle mind games to play, to stand out. Not every place you can really do this, but if you have super bright cleats, or if you have,
I talk about that all the time.
A towel or something.
All
If you're wearing something. Now, a lot of times when you go to camps, they give you stuff to wear.
Right.
But if you have something about
accessories,
you, bright socks or whatever, that it's if you see a guy that's wearing pink cleats or something, that wins 2 reps, and it was and then he comes up a few minutes later, he wins another. It's hey, who's that kid in the pink cleats? And it makes you memorable rather than just wearing no armbands. I'm not saying that you have to go crazy. You're not wearing the ski goggles out of the camp or anything like that, like you are 7-on-7 or pajama pants or whatever, like we see sometimes.
Don't do that.
Right,
yeah, don't
right.
Do
At a camp, that's
don't do that.
7-on-7. I guess it's a little bit more okay, but sometimes do something to stand out without being crazy, because that does help. I mean, it is a legitimate thing of not only just standing out from a performance standpoint, but like trying to stick out visually too. For it's like, okay, I've seen that kid. I know that kid. I don't know who that is, but I've seen him do something a couple times today.
For sure.
So that is play some mind games in there, even though people, coaches or evaluators or media or whatever, may not even know that that's what you're going for, but it ends up happening.
Right.
We talk about that all the time. We've been actually saying that for years. Even quarterbacks wearing the hat backwards.
Yeah.
Bright hat turning it backwards.
Yeah.
So also, let me throw a couple more out there too. Knowing how to work the room.
Yeah.
Guys, when you get there, if your kid is quiet,
shaking
if he's
hands
just
and
showing
kissing
up,
babies.
man,
Shaking
if you
hands
don't
and
know how to
kissing
work the room,
Yeah.
you're probably not going to be seen. Again,
Right.
everybody is not going to have that amazing, I'm going to get 20 reps, type of deal. But you have to do your due diligence before you get there. Don't stand around and just look at who's there. Go and shake hands. Meet. I don't care if it's an adult, whoever it is, the janitor. Go meet them, shake their hands, right? One of the funniest things I would always have my guys do is go and find the opposition coach. If you played receiver, go find a DB coach, introduce yourself, and say, hey, I need some great reps. So if you got a good receiver, if you got a good DB, send them to me. And then do the reverse. If you're a DB, go find a wide receiver coach. So that way, you're always going to be singled out, but you got to make sure that you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
You got to make sure you coming with that, with that thing.
With that
So,
thunder.
Yeah, you got to.
Yeah.
But little things like that, and again, do it respectfully. Don't go in, having your kid cursing and being disruptive and demeaning to anybody. There's a way to do it to where it's good camaraderie, but you got to remember at the end of the day, if it's 500 kids and they're going to do this everywhere and it's the same guys, how will not every kid that shows up is going to be remembered? That's impossible.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
How is my kid going to stand out? And there are a ton of different tools that we talk about in the book and always on the show, little things that you can do to help your kid stand out. But the most important thing is none of that works if they don't have that fire to go out and get it.
Absolutely.
None of the other stuff will work.
And another thing, and we can kind of move on to the evaluation stuff in a minute or whatever direction you want to go, but you're not just trying to stand out to the people that are watching, because at all these camps, everything is on film.
Absolutely.
And it ends up
You want to stand
in front
out,
of
period.
coaches. So it's like you don't want to just, do it for the people that are there, but be aware that there are cameras. We've all been to these camps. There's 10, 15 cameras,
Eyes in the sky,
set up around the entire field at every different drills and different angles and stuff. So, obviously you want to stand out to the people there, but know that other people are going to be watching at a later date that are probably more influential than the people that are there anyways. Because the media and people that are there can only do so much. The coaches are the ones that actually offer you
absolutely
and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So that's an important thing to think about. Is it's not just for that day. It's for the future too.
Right. And those are the things that we talk about on a weekly basis, and those are the type of things that you have to know. But sometimes people and athletes, even though we've been talking about this they don't know.
Yeah.
They think it's it can turn into a dog and pony show sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, sometimes.
And a theatrical type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get below the surface and what the things that we're talking about, that's what we're trying to get the meat and potatoes of this thing. But going back to that matchup you're talking about, I saw that and I thought, and knowing the other guy, that's what he lives on. You know what I mean? And I met him about 2 years ago, and he's been doing that same thing. He always wants to compete against the best guys.
Yeah.
But that's the reason he's a highly offered kid as a freshman. Also, he got on the field as a freshman, and he's a multi-sport athlete as a freshman.
He's one of the ones that has that.
That
Not only does he have the mentality, but he actually
the
produces,
athleticism to back it up.
And he plays multiple positions in football.
Yes.
And multiple sports. So it's like and like you said, he when you get around him, when you see him, he's talking, and it's not
bad.
It's not disrespectful stuff, but it's like
come
basically
on, let's go.
I'm here, yeah.
But he's raising the level of competition to his level.
Yeah.
The guys around him, and it's infectious.
Yeah.
I've been around him in multiple camps. Seen him for a couple of years now. When he steps in there, the pace of everything elevates when he steps on the field, and that matchup was great. And and the thing about it is they're really good friends. You know what I mean? They know each other off the field, But
that's the beauty of
that's the beauty
sport.
of it.
Yeah, that's
Right.
the beauty of sport. Then we could dig deeper into that. Kids like that, I guarantee you, is going to have a very profitable NIL because of the simple fact that he's camera friendly. He's competitive. He's the face of what we want to see in sports. Somebody that's going to be respectful, but mean when they get in between those lines.
Right.
That's what you want to see. So again, it's how are you shaping your young athletes? What are you putting them in position to accomplish? Right. One or two things going to ever happen when you go to a camp. Right. You're going to get exposed or you're going to get exposure.
Right.
So you have to make sure going in that you're mentally, physically prepared to dominate every single rep, whether that happens or not. If they see you going full speed, even in failure, they'll rather say, hey, this is my kind of guy. I can coach everything up. I can't coach heart. I can't coach desire.
Right.
I can't coach fire.
Right.
I can coach the skill set part.
Right.
But if this guy just don't ever slow down, I always tell my guys, make the coaches slow you down. You don't slow yourself down. Make them say, man, look, dial it back a little bit. Then hey, I got your attention.
Absolutely.
If they have to tell you to speed it up, you might as well pack up and go home.
Yeah, you're not really doing what you came to do.
No, you can pack up and go home because you've already lost the room.
Right. And those are the type of things that you have to know when you're going in, not just at a camp setting, but even in a practice setting.
Absolutely.
Every practice you have, you're going there to win.
Absolutely.
So you have to take that type of mindset when you do it. But I'm going to give a couple shout-outs to a couple of people watching. Shout out to Coach Coleman watching. Shout out to my guy Carlos Cruz out in West Texas, Odessa Permian. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to my guy Big Cruz out there, headed to Texas Tech and UTEP this weekend, one of the top freshman DBs.
Yes, sir. Will be tons of offers coming up
it's
soon.
It's about to drop, man. Caleb Cruz is one of those guys, man. Shout out to my guy J Mac from the Dub, checking in, man. Also, we'll take time to thank our sponsor, Epic Sports Apparel, for sponsoring the show, man. Look in the link, man. Click it. You can help us keep this show going. We're one of the best shows on the Fishbowl Radio Network. Of course, the Guppy of the Year, the newcomer of the year in 2023. And we're coming for the crown this year, man. We're coming to be the best show. Keep us going. Click that PayPal. Donate to the show and keep us rolling, man. So, we talked about camps, but the evaluation process, Marshall, is a thing that, people are enamored with. The stars, how do I get them? Some people feel like they should be here, slotted, ranked, and things like that. But, as we spoke about, guys being freshmen, a lot of times they're not ready to be ranked. They're not ready to have stars yet. It's a process. It's an evaluation process. And I think a lot of times people don't get that when they approach it. They see certain, you got a lot of watching. They look at other people's profiles and why is this guy getting offers? Why does he have stars? But, kind of go into that evaluation process a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, with Rivals, it's fun because it is really a group, collaboration. And so, I mean, every site, every network has their own, ways of going about things. But, I mean, it is truly based off of, what have you shown us? It's not, I mean, measurables are a major part of it, and I think one part of rankings, at least with Rivals, that a lot of people either don't know or don't pay attention to, don't like, don't care about, whatever it may be, is that our rankings are projections of NFL potential, right? It's not necessarily. I mean, you might be a 1,500-yard receiver in 6A or whatever, but if you're 5'9", it's like, okay, there's a limitation. I'm not saying every. I mean, there are small wide. I mean, Tyreek Hill, maybe the best wide receiver in the NFL. That's different. You're talking about an elite attribute to him with speed and everything. But everything typically is NFL projections. So it's like we try to take that into what we're doing. So I mean, measurables are a big part of it. I mean, film is a big part. I mean, I love seeing people in person. I mean, you can get a lot of information off of film if they have certain skill sets. Can they play the ball, or do they have a motor, like all that stuff. But a lot of stuff I like to see them in person. Like, okay, how are they actually built? How are they, what are their movement skills? What are they, what do they do when they're not on the ball, or whatever the case may be? So I feel like I have a fairly decent eye when looking at that stuff, and we can get into positions and stuff if you want, but I think put your film out, but also, I mean, go to camps. That is one of the biggest things when you're evaluating. I mean, we want to see you in person, so go to camps. Reach out to media with, spring ball schedules and, hey, here's when we're practicing, or hey, here I'm working out with so-and-so trainer at whatever, like, come check me out or whatever. Because, I mean, sometimes, like, there's a lot of guys that, hit you up in the DMs or whatever, like, hey, here's my film, like, can you evaluate me? And those are fine. But then also you do get the ones like, hey, why do I not have stars yet? And it's like, well, that's not a great way to get stars. I mean, sometimes you end up getting, like, sometimes it works, but it's like, it's like, hey, I just haven't seen you yet or whatever. Like, oh, let me check you out.
Right.
But, I mean, try to, find a way to get in front of somebody. Because, I mean, really all it takes is, one person, one media member tweets about you, other media members see you, a coach will see you, something like that. So put everything you do on Twitter, or, I mean, Instagram's fine, I guess, but Twitter and is, like, the biggest one. And you don't have to be one of those people that, puts every workout online and stuff. But, I mean, if you do run track, put your times out there. If you are in the weight room, put your numbers on there, whether it's huddle,
verify times,
or verify times. Not don't say you're 6'2" and then you measure in at 5'11", and it's like, okay, that does no good for anybody. I mean, say you're like, don't lie about stuff. That's the easiest way to get turned off on somebody. But yeah, verify times, and I mean, we can kind of talk, like I said, talk positions, whatever you want to do, but get in front of people, and that's the biggest thing. And then it kind of goes back to the camps. Like, if you want to get a ranking and everything, put yourself out there. So
I think that's the big thing. And from my perspective and a scouting perspective, we talk about these things. I have to see you. My DMs are flooded all the time with this kind of thing. They want to know, well, how do you get stars, or how do you get this and do that? Well, come where I'm at. Like you said, come up and talk to me. I'm very approachable.
Yeah.
It's only one of me. I'm pretty noticeable most of the time. So, I mean, if you want that type of thing, it's not really hard. But, Coach, you speak about this, and I love the shaking hands and kissing babies thing, because I've seen guys that do that, and most of those guys are pretty, well known once they get around to seeing everybody. Mm-hmm. But speak on that just a little bit.
No, that thing works. Is something that I've been having, my guys do for years. You have to know, and this is even going on official visits, going to college camps. It doesn't matter where you go if you don't know how to work the room. Again, the concept is, how are you going to walk away? One of my favorite camps of all was the USA, 2-day camp that had the college coaches. Shout out to L Pops and AI. I would always tell my kids at the beginning of the 2-day camp, if Sunday evening, if you walk out and nobody hands you a card, you look like trash. You didn't do nothing, because there are a ton of coaches out here that's evaluating you, even not even coaching your position. Mm-hmm. So they're watching everything. So the key is, how many cards, business cards, can you get? Hey, let's stay in touch before this thing ends. So that means every rep counts. Everything you do, from the way you walk on the field, run on the field, all of those things count. So you have to know that going in, that this is how you have to look, so you can maximize your potential on your way out. So understanding, how can I build relationships? How can I go in and make these writers, make these coaches say, this is a kid I want to remember and stay in touch with and actually follow, again, so I can leverage those relationships however I can, for the future. I think that's very important. Question for you, Marshall.
Yep.
A lot of kids that are, I have a ton of parents asking me, well, my kid is a junior going to be a senior, and they're going to, which I don't recommend, honestly, especially now with the transfer portal. They're going to a lot of Power 5 camps their junior year, going into their senior year, but they are not ranked. And I'm like, that's a bad idea, because being that late, you got to understand, why would I give a kid an offer that's unranked when I can go get 3, 4, 5-star kids, that we can bring in immediately and make an impact that way? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, man, I think it's one of the biggest things in recruiting, whether it's the player, the parents, their coaches, whatever it may be, is, being real about what you are or are not. So because there are a lot of times it's like there's a bunch of kids, I'm going to go visit Alabama, I'm going to go visit Oklahoma and, Tennessee and all these visits, but it's like you're probably going to go to, UNT or, Tulane or whatever it may be. Lean into that because you can have, you might, if you go on a visit, you might get a couple offers from like, I'm not going to throw any schools under the bus saying that their offer isn't as good, but I mean, you might get a couple of the high offers, like, the Power 5 offers. But if you start visiting some of those smaller schools, you might have, 10, 12, 15, 20 offers that, broadens your horizons and, going to these camps and stuff. And I mean, there's certain schools, certain big schools that I would say, yeah, go to because there are enough, these mega camps and stuff like that where there are a lot of, variety of schools, and like, yeah, one or two of those a summer are good. But if there's a school, like if a kid from East Texas, if UL Lafayette invites you to a camp or something, like, go, because don't say like, oh no, I'm gonna go to the UT camp that weekend. Be a realist of what you are, and that can be tough sometimes. Also be a realist of, this is another thing for people, be a realist of your position too, because sometimes if the school says like, oh, we like you as safety, it's like, no, I want to play wide receiver, I want to play corner, or whatever the case may be. Like, don't cut yourself off from schools or from coaches or whatever because, you think you're better at this. They probably have a good idea of what they're doing, right? Now, I mean, are there players that can be elite enough to play both? Yes, but they probably aren't worried about which camps they're going to. They're probably pretty set on offers and everything.
Absolutely.
So, be a realist of what you are or are not. And a lot of times the downfall there can be the parents or the coaches that are saying like, oh, no, we're going to TCU this weekend, or we're going to Oklahoma, or we're going to Michigan, or whatever. But it's like, okay, well, UNT hits you up. They're sending you a bunch of mail, so like, why not go check out UNT? Or, even if it might even be the difference of, Texas versus Houston, which is like Houston's on the up and up. Mm-hmm. But I mean, they're not Texas. No one's gonna lie to you. There's a difference in program there, so It's like. That's a huge thing, is being a realist, because we see kids every weekend that are on visits just for the photo shoots, which now they took those away. But
right.
Just to show that on Instagram or whatever that they're there. But it's like, yeah, you should probably be at like UTSA this weekend. But
maximize your time.
So, yeah, maximize your time. I mean, the money you're spending on traveling or whatever, do so where it actually like results in probably getting offers, or at least hopefully putting yourself in position to get offers. Meanwhile, you're at a Texas camp with 100 receivers, and it's like you had, not stats don't really mean much, but I mean you had 500 yards in 3A, but there's like there's 10 receivers here that had 1,000 in 6A they're gonna look at those first generally. Not saying that means everything,
absolutely,
but yeah, it's a be real with yourself. You can give yourself a career being knowing what you are and are not.
Well, here's the thing in a nutshell about that as well is there's a difference between showing up for a camp and being invited. People that they want there, a little tidbit, that there's a certain things that you have to notice when you go in. You can't just show up for a picture and a T-shirt. You have to know going in that, hey, this is what it is. And a thing we talk about all the time is look at the roster at your position. If you're a 6'2" cornerback, look and see if they have other cornerbacks comparable in your particular position. Now, if you're a 5'8", 165 corner and they got 5'10", 5'11", 6'1", 6'2" corners on the roster, that may not be the place for you to go and camp. Start at the smaller schools. I had a kid reach out to me the other day, hey, what do I need to camp? He's a freshman. First thing I told him, he sent me his film. You need to work on your explosion. You didn't separate well. You're fast, but if you break a long kick return, I expect you to go to the house. First 5 plays on your film got to be bangers. They got to be explosive plays. Secondly, go start at the D2 and D3 level, because first of all, these coaches move around just like the transfer portal.
Absolutely.
Now. Establish that relationship with that guy. That DC or that GA can move on in 2 years by the time you come out, and he's at North Texas. He's at UTSA. Coaches talk. They have friends. They play with each other. They can say, hey, man, I had a guy come here and ball out right now. He's not ready for you guys' level, but keep him on your radar. This guy I really think has a lot of potential. They pick up the phone and call each other. That relationship that you establish with him means more to him that you didn't, throw your nose up at him. Go to a SAGU camp. Go to Texas Western camp. Establish yourself early. I'm talking to you underclassmen, young guys.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're 25s, most of the 25 stuff is already done. They have their boards already drawn out. They still have some guys that are flying under the radar, but the 26 and 27, you guys are on the clock right now as far as when it comes to being recruited and being available to be recruited and being exposed to recruiting. So those are the type of things that we talk about all the time. And you can't throw your nose up at Louisiana College in Louisiana or a small school. You never know who you're going to run into later on. When you're being underclassmen, if you get an invite, man, go and ball out. You never know where you're going to run into these guys again. And I think that's the thing we talk about all the time, Coach.
And then also you have to be able to, like you said earlier, what Rivals does, when they're looking at talent is you have to be able to project, right? Look at your kid where they are right now. If you have a freshman and he's on the freshman team and next year he's going to be on JV, don't go waste your time going to no Power 5 camp.
Right.
You got to get their feet wet early, build their confidence, and get them some exposure that's going to help them, because if they go Power 5 and get obliterated, now their confidence and that Power 5 school is probably never going to come back to them because it's what's the worth, right? And then you're not in position to even have the varsity type of film for them to even look at. So what's the point? So again, you have to understand where you are and then be able to project and say, okay, if I'm going to be a starter by the time my JV year comes around, let me build a product, right, that schools are going to want to see, and then look at the landscape and say, okay, JV year, 9 times out of 10, Power 5 may not be an option unless you do something amazing, right, the whole year, but let's at least put the information out there, go D2, D3, low D1, and see what happens, right? Because we know if you're putting out great content, if you're putting out great film, Power 5 will come looking, but to go and knock on their door and not be sure of what you have could be disastrous for your kid. So you just got to know.
Here's another tidbit for you Texas guys. Around the country, Texas is, one of those states where they produce a high level of top-tier talent. Man, go to New Jersey, go to Iowa, go to North Carolina, go to somewhere where they don't see that type of Texas talent, and I guarantee you're going to stand out. If you're standing out in Texas, if you have the resources to do it, man, hop a flight, go to Iowa, go to North Dakota, South Dakota State. Those guys are high-level FCS. They national championship guys every year. Hop in the car and go to, Georgia Southern. Anywhere that's not a high profile college on that level, they love Texas guys. You know what I'm saying? That's just another tidbit to throw it out there. Go ahead,
Just
Marshall.
this past week, and this is still an ACC school. It's a Power 5 school, but Syracuse got 2 Texas kids in the last week.
2 high-level Texas.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you got
High level.
Byron Washington and Luke Carney. So
Absolutely.
Maybe the biggest offensive lineman in the country. Like it's in terms of size, like actual biggest.
Yes.
And then a 4-star quarterback from Dallas
That's been
are
flying
going
under the radar.
to Syracuse,
Right.
Which is not generally. But if you look
It
at
doesn't happen.
If you look at Syracuse's staff, they have a bunch of Texas guys that have been in and around programs in Texas, and that's another thing is like sometimes programs. I've talked to coaches before where it's like, okay, West Virginia probably not going to recruit a bunch of Texas kids, but if there's a coach that was at Oklahoma State or was at, Texas Tech or whatever, and they have a pre-existing relationship, like it might be worth it to go check that out if that was like a thing. If because coaches are big. They say don't commit to a coach. Sometimes that happens.
That
like
happens.
If you want to be developed by a certain person or whatever.
Right.
But branch out, and that doesn't mean branch out by going to USC and Georgia and Michigan or whatever.
Right.
If that's not your If you're
not on that level.
If you're not on that level, if
Right.
you're not hearing from them, if you don't have an offer from them, but go to some of those other schools and something might happen. You see a lot of, especially, and this is kind of like a whole different conversation, especially with conferences moving around and schools shuffling. If you are, a USC, like some of the West Coast schools are playing in the Big Ten, so you're going to see probably some Midwest kids go to USC. You're probably going to see some of the California kids go to. I mean, they're already going to the Ohio States and the Michigans and Penn States of the world, but you're going to see other people going there because they know it's like, oh, hey, my family will still get to see me play here and there. So, those are things like if you have a good option at a school that's maybe not in your region, it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, it's to leave home for a bit and branch out and grow as like a person. I mean, sometimes if you want to stay close to family, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you have a good opportunity, like, don't let that stop you from potentially putting yourself in a good position to move on to the next level or things like that. Because sometimes people do that, and it's like, oh, I'll just go here because it's close to family. Like, if that's a necessity, then sure, but don't let that stop you from growing as a prospect.
Right.
So.
Well, I hit you up the other day. Syracuse has been in the pipeline. They got Willie Goodacre, who's a high-level offensive tackle from Guard last year. You bring Big Byron in. Something's bubbling over there, man. People don't see it, but I see it.
Something is jumping, yeah.
And Carney comes in and gives you a high-level, productive quarterback that's a 3-time state champion in Texas. That's saying something. A guy that can probably go in there and challenge for playing time.
I think he's going to play early.
He's going to play early.
Because, I mean, they've got Kyle McCord, who's going to be a starter this year. And then I was talking about it with a couple people yesterday, actually.
Yeah. Carney
will go in, and if they might bring someone in the portal. But if McCord leaves, which is, I guess not necessarily expected, but, if he does good, how they hope, he'll probably move on. There's two guys, and they're redshirt senior and redshirt junior. That they'll be that next year,
right?
And I think Syracuse's coach has told Luke, like, compared to some of these older guys, like, if you come in and if you're on the same page, he's going to be a January enrollee, so he's going to have the entire offseason there
for sure.
If you're on the same page with him, we're going to roll with the young guy,
absolutely,
because he gives us 3 to 4 years to run the offense and everything, rather than being choppy with it. Yeah, so sometimes in Syracuse, are they the biggest brand program? No, but they're obviously working on something.
Right.
If it's a situation where it's like, oh, if I go to Houston, I can play early, but if I go to Texas A&M, you might have offers from both, but if I go to Texas A&M, it looks like, in 2 years I might be able to play, but at Houston I might be able to play like as a freshman. That's important.
That makes all the sense in the world.
Because if you can put film early, if you can get on the field early, even if it's not great film, the best way to get better is to be on the field. I mean, get experience, right?
Reps.
You can get better in practice, obviously, but when you're on the field and it's the real deal, and if you're Houston and you're facing Oklahoma State and you're facing TCU now and everything, you're going to get better with time, and it's like, might as well help yourself and do that year 1 or year 2 rather than, I'm a redshirt sophomore now, I've been here for 3 years, and I might get playing time this year at A&M or something like that. So it's, again, recruiting is all about being real with yourself and knowing your strengths and weaknesses and putting those, trying to fix your weaknesses or minimize them, but also taking advantage of what do I do best, and putting that foot forward, because no one's perfect. Like, everyone's going to have something they need to work on, but if you can like you were saying earlier, if you can parlay this with that, if you can, okay, I do this really well, and I know that this maybe smaller school has an offense that does that really, really well, I can probably, if you're good in college, the NFL will find you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like, there's people all over the league that, I mean,
absolutely came
you got
from small
guys
schools.
from Ivy Leagues, and it's like, no one's going to the Ivy League to they're not. I don't even know if they can't even give athletic scholarships and everything. So it's like, but there's guys from there. I mean, there's high level players in the league that went to what you would consider like nothing school. I mean, there's D2 players in the league. So you can get to the league from anywhere if you're good.
Well,
if you're good.
If you ball, you're going to get the call.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Don't even sweat the technique, man. But this is the part of the show, Marshall, we're ending up. And I appreciate you for joining us again, Marshall Levenson from Rivals.com.
Give out your
show. Oh, man, we're going to have to extend it sometime. but this is part of the show. Give out your social medias where they can follow you and find you, man. And appreciate you for coming on today.
Yeah, best place to find me is just on Twitter. It's just at Marshall Rivals. Anyone that has questions or whatever, send me a DM. I think anyone can DM me.
Yeah.
No, thank you all for having me. I mean, if you send me a DM or question or whatever, I'll try to, I get a lot of them, so I'll try to get to it when I can, to help out whoever I can, whenever I can. But and if you see me out at events, which I'm at a lot of them, walk up to me and dap me up, shake my hand, whatever, and be like, hey, I'm so and so. This is where I go to school. Like,
right.
I don't know. Another thing, and I meant to say this earlier. If you're going to an event, I mean, if you see like a media member saying like, hey, I'm going to be there or whatever, send them a message being like, hey, so and so, like I'm gonna be out there this weekend. Like I go to so and so, like keep an eye out for me. It puts you on a radar already, and it's like if you're looking at a list, like oh, that's the the Williams kid or the Smith kid. Like I saw them the other day. Like that's so and so. So that helps sometimes. So try to again put yourself out there as much as you can.
Man, well listen, man. Hope we educated and elevated you today, man. Shout out to Marshall for coming through. Coach J in the building. Of course, next week we're right here, 11 to 12. Live from the Fishbowl Radio Network, the On Your Mark Show, powered and sponsored by Epic Sports Apparel. Shout out to my guy, Maynard Mike. Take us out, and my guy, Scott Rapp. We'll talk to you next week. We out.
Let's go.
Hey, this Manna Mike. I'm not sure what you own, but this here is on the mark. Like a spiral from a 5-star recruit, we throwing darts, really focused. WD-40 couldn't stop the way we grinded. In the trenches, putting that work in, I relate to all my linemen. This is for the men, the boys do not belong here. Tiptoeing to the top, we doing cone drills. The hottest show in the world, you don't even gotta search. Steady putting in work, you see the sweat up on my shirt. They wasn't aware of us at first, we wasn't on their radar. Now every play that we make, they gon' say similar to a razor blade, we gon' stay sharp. The news ain't official if it's not on the mark.